Hello, this is Eric Morris Eskenazi. I'm the host of the Erratic Dispatches podcast. Thanks for tuning into this latest episode featuring an interview with Mercedes Killeen, who's a blogger, poet, and mental health advocate. Two of her books, titled Tulips and Using Spoon as a Knife, are available now through Gray Border Books. Hello, thanks for listening to the Erratic Dispatches podcast. We'll be back shortly after a brief break. Hello. I've been using Anchor.fm now for about almost a year for the podcast Erratic Dispatches, which is distributed through Anchor.fm. It's completely free to use, very easy, and any audio that you upload or record through the website, it will be you can use it to organize your audio files, and once your podcasts are ready to submit, it will be available to stream within at least 8 different streaming sites. So Mercedes, do you mind just starting off with like what inspired you initially to get into writing and writing poetry? And when you're growing up, were there particular writers, poets, or even like teachers, that inspired you with your own writing?
I started mainly with poetry, and I kind of got into it around maybe 13 or so. And that's when I kind of started writing. My first couple of poems, or my first one I had published, was actually about my mom and her life. She's a refugee from El Salvador, from the Civil War and stuff like that. So initially that was my first piece I got published, was writing for World Refugee Day. And then, as I started writing more, as I think you had seen in some of the stuff I sent you, a lot of my stuff centers around mental health. So I kind of was writing as a way to cope and deal. And that's kind of how I really got into it, at first. Yeah.
Okay. And you're based in Toronto?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto.
And where you live, is there a large writers community up there?
Yeah, I did a creative writing group in high school, which was kind of small. But then I really kind of found more of a community when I was at U of T, and studying creative writing and English and things like that. So there's definitely a huge community there. And so, yeah.
And with your own poetry, pre-COVID, were you doing public readings at different places?
Yeah, I would be, just at bars or coffee shops, or my publisher's based out of Niagara. So I would do the Niagara Writers Festival, panels and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And do you mind discussing about a couple of your poetry books that are out now?
Yeah.
Through, is it Gray Border Books?
Yeah, Gray Borders. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my first book is a chapbook called Tulips, and just centered around experiences of mental illness, specifically what it's like to be hospitalized for mental health issues, and kind of a lot of imagery of from the hospital or around the hospital. So that was my first book, and then my second one is called Using a Spoon as a Knife, which is more of a full-length collection. Still a lot of mental health stuff, but a little bit more experimental in form. Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah. Did you want to read any selections of your poetry from either of the books?
Yeah, I have a couple. I have kind of 2 from each book, if that works.
Okay, sure.
So, okay, I'll read from these first 2 are from Tulips. So one's called Oral Fixation. Swallow medication, brush teeth, eat, smoke a Belmont, chew gum, put on lipstick, bite your lip all day, smoke another Belmont, eat, smoke, chew, kiss, blow, smoke, chew, swallow medication, brush teeth. Should I go through all of them, or kind of
whatever you feel comfortable?
Between?
Whatever you feel comfortable doing. Sure.
Okay, cool. I'll just go through them, I guess. The next one's called Things on the Left Side of Your Chest. Eternally empty pockets, sloppily placed at the breast of your shirts, will never be filled and will remain dark, hollow cavities. So those are the 2 from Tulips. They're much shorter. And then these two are from Using a Spoon as a Knife. The first one, I'm just going to read one, but it's from a series. And so the whole series has the same author's note, which says the following poems are composed solely of criteria from the DSM-5, or the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Not exhaustive, some punctuation added for effect. So this one's called BPD, Borderline Personality Disorder. Emptiness, neediness, idealization and devaluation, unstable emotional experiences, frequent mood changes, emotions that are easily aroused, intense, and/or out of proportion to events and circumstances, intense feelings of nervousness, tenseness, or panic, often in reaction to interpersonal stresses, worry about the negative effects of past unpleasant experiences and future negative possibilities, feeling fearful, apprehensive, or threatened by uncertainty, fears of falling apart or losing control, fears of rejection by and/or separation from significant others, associated with fears of excessive dependency and complete loss of autonomy, frequent feelings of being down, miserable, and/or hopeless, difficulty recovering from such moods, pessimism about the future, pervasive shame, feelings of inferior self-worth, thoughts of suicide and suicidal behavior, acting on the spur of the moment in response to immediate stimuli, acting on a momentary basis without a plan or consideration of outcomes, difficulty establishing or following plans, a sense of urgency and self-harming behavior under emotional distress, engagement in dangerous, risky, and potentially self-damaging activities unnecessarily and without regard to consequences, lack of concern for one's limitations, and denial of the reality of personal danger, persistent or frequent angry feelings, anger or irritability in response to minor slights and insults. And then there's just one more. That one's called 2016 Fusion Shiraz. Chugging $8 bitter red wine alone at 11 a.m., feeling like I'm back at church, gulping wine in the hopes of salvation. Maybe this time he will enter me. Maybe if I break this bread, I will swallow him whole. Maybe if I break myself down, I will be perfect enough for a man to love me. Oh, drink this cup. Trust in him and you will not thirst. Drink this cup, drink this cup, drink this bitter cup, and you will be whole. Break your body, break your body, break your each gulp, each gulp, each gulp. I look to the heavens, I stare at the ceiling like I'm back at church. I look up with each gulp, I look up and wait for this to be over. So those are the 4 poems.
Those are great. And like, how has like the public reaction been so far to your poetry books?
Been pretty positive. I mean, it's I'm working with a small press, so it's not like a huge scale, but it's been great. Like my favorite part is like doing a reading and then people will come up and kind of share their own mental health experiences. And so like that's been probably the most rewarding part, is just people feeling seen and stuff.
And like during the beginning of the shutdown last year, were you doing like any virtual readings with like different groups?
I've done one. It was pretty recent with the Art Bar. I don't know. It's like a Toronto-based reading series. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I've, I think that was the only one I did. Yeah, I've just done the one. Yeah.
Okay. And like right now, are you like working on any like new collections of poetry or?
I haven't really been writing poetry for a while. I've kind of transitioned into like personal finance writing, actually.
Okay.
Like blogging and stuff, still like mental health heavy, but more blogging. But I'm editing a new collection, which is like poetry and visual art and short fiction, called like Daddy. It's a cultural anthology. Yeah. So I'm working on that.
Do you mind talking a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Daddy was actually the original title of Using a Spoon as a Knife. And then my publisher had kind of suggested maybe changing the title, because Using a Spoon as a Knife, I think, was originally like a section header or something like that. Because we wanted to maybe do like a larger anthology to get like more perspectives of like what that word like means to different people and, you know, their experiences. So yeah, the collection is just a response to the word daddy, whatever that means to the person, whether they're like grossed out by people using the term, or, you know, they identify with it, or they have, you know, trauma related to the word, you know, whatever it may be. It's just a bunch of different people's responses to that term. Yeah.
So are you having like a large group of people that are contributing to the anthology?
Yeah, we've had a lot of submissions. It's actually been hard, like kind of sorting through all of them. We've got like our contributor list finalized, but yeah, we had a lot of submissions, a lot of really awesome work. Yeah.
Are these like writers like throughout Canada, or is it like international contributions?
International.
Okay.
I think a lot were from the States. We had a lot of American writers, but yeah, some across the world. Yeah.
Okay. And are you like a writer full time?
I work in marketing right now.
Okay.
So yeah, I do like content writing and content marketing kind of thing. But I do like the freelance writing on the side. And then once in a while, I'll do like some poetry things as well, like here and there. Yeah.
Like when you were in university or high school, like did you take any poetry courses, or were there like did you like study like any certain periods of poetry, like modern poetry or certain centuries of poetry?
Yeah. Well, I took like a couple, I think there was only like one creative writing course offered in high school. So I did that. And then it was one of my minors at U of T, was creative expression and society. So yeah, I really identify with more like confessional poets and some like imagist poets. I really love like Charles Bukowski, Sylvia Plath, Emily Dickinson, a lot of the mental health centered work.
Yeah, and I was reading up on one of your blog entries here. I just wanted to review the content, the one about analyzing Bukowski so you want to be a writer. I really liked that entry.
Thank you.
Yeah. So have you read like most of his like? I know he's written like he wrote so much, and I know they keep putting out his stuff after he passed away. So I guess have you read like a large section of his work?
Yeah, he has one collection that's called "You Get So Alone at Times That It Just Makes Sense," and that one's been like probably my favorite, like that I return to a lot. But I have one of the like collections of like, I forget what it's called. I think it might be something, The Pleasures of the Damned or something like that. But yeah, I always return to "You Get So Alone at Times That It Just Makes Sense."
Yeah. And I mentioned to you before, I really liked the blog post of writing as a form of mental health advocacy.
Yeah.
I think it's how it's so important for for writers to feature a lot of stuff from the past, any issues they've had, like personal demons, and how like from my own writing, it's like always like a very cathartic thing to write. Like sometimes it gets so intense, it's like I almost feel like sick, physically sick, when I'm just writing about a lot of painful stuff, or the stuff I've been really tapped into my consciousness since I was like a child.
Absolutely.
Do you mind like discussing like any other like kind of writing projects you're involved with? Do you write like fiction or short stories as well?
No, the only other thing I do is a little bit of creative nonfiction. But really like the bulk of my creative writing has just been poetry. I really kind of like zeroed in on it.
Yeah. There like any particular like contemporary poets that you really like with their style?
I love like Suvankam Tamavangsa. She's really great. She had a chapbook, I think it's called like Citrus Sweet or something like that. And that was kind of my inspiration when I like saw, like, I didn't know what a chapbook was. Like, I mean, if you're not in the poetry community, it's not like really a popular thing. So seeing hers and like just realizing like, oh, this is a thing that like I could do. And like she went to like U of T and like kind of had similar sort of style. So I felt very like inspired by her work, and it kind of like motivated me a little bit to do Tulips. And yeah.
Are there any particular like bookstores in the Toronto area that have a really great selection of or eclectic selection of poetry?
I would say, I think like the big one is Knife Fork Book, I believe it's called, with Kirby. Yeah, that's got a ton of like local work, just a really, really wide assortment. I think for Toronto, that's probably the best spot, yeah, to get some poetry. Yeah.
Did you ever like get involved in like doing like, zines like for poets, like underground sort of stuff?
Yeah, there was a period, I think it was either after I wrote Using a Spoon as a Knife or in between Tulips and writing the second book, where I just kind of only did zines for a while, because I didn't really want to be doing like a full length sort of thing, but I did want to be writing. So yeah, I did a lot of like kind of weird little zines that I would like sell at fairs and things like that. Yeah.
And besides like writing, do you do any other creative outlets like with visual stuff or audio stuff?
Not really. I used to sing. Like I went to like an art school in high school, and I was in like the choir and stuff or whatever, and in the vocal program. But I kind of like lost it. I did it a little bit at U of T, but not much anymore. Yeah, mainly the writing. Yeah.
And do you like? Are you a type of writer that has to write every day? Like, if it's not like something regarding like a day job at your own personal work, are you very disciplined in that matter?
I don't think so. I think I have like spurts. Like I guess, and I think like not being at U of T studying writing anymore, like I definitely don't have as much structure. Like that was something I really enjoyed. But I did like two workshop courses there with AF Moritz, and he was the professor for both of the workshops. And in both of those workshops, like I wrote my books. Like I wrote like the work for Tulips in the first workshop, and then for the second workshop, I wrote a lot of the work for Using a Spoon as a Knife. So I feel like maybe without that structure, I'm not like as dedicated to writing. But yeah, I have like switched over to more of like the blogging stuff as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you find to be like the biggest joys and challenges of writing, either whether it's creative or just like working in the corporate sector?
I also like work as an editor. Like I do like freelance editing as well. So, I think I can be a little obsessive about wanting to make my work quote unquote perfect or as close to perfect as possible. So I think like knowing when to stop editing can be a hard thing for me, because I'll just edit forever. Yeah.
Hello, thanks for listening to the Erratic Dispatches podcast. We'll be back shortly after a brief break. Do you want to read any more selections of your poetry?
Oh, I could.
Yeah.
Let me see. I could probably just read maybe some more from Tulips.
Okay.
Okay, so this one is the first poem called Tulips. And it starts with a quote. I didn't want any flowers. I only wanted to lie with my hands turned up and be utterly empty. Sylvia Plath, Tulips. Sometimes when I lie in bed, my mind flickers and I'm back in the hospital. White sheets, blue gown, still, empty, hopeless. Sometimes when I walk down a hallway, everything flickers and I'm back in the hospital. Pale walls, sickly, and I'm less than a person. I'm back under a Form 1, stripped of rights, of autonomy. They're given to my psychiatrist. I'm completely captive and completely free. There's nothing left to lose. They took my belongings, they took my clothes, they took my blood and my pulse and my temperature, And more importantly, they took me away from myself. Sometimes out here in the real world, simultaneously free to do whatever I want and trapped in my own life, I want to be stripped again. I want to lie with my thoughts naked, with my wounds exposed. I want to give up, to give in, to be less than a person. So that's one of them. This one is called The Joy of Life, in quotation marks. Blue speckled statue, mother holding child. They sit on their bench, hard, cold. I sit beside them, sucking my smoke. Oh, the joy of life, the joy of these 15 minutes I get to leave my little unit of the hospital to reflect on living, on suffering, on suicide. I breathe death in. Let me see, I'll skip that one. Okay, so this one's called Lakeshore Boulevard West. The people drag themselves along, death hanging between their lips, each exhale bringing them one step closer to their last. This one's called Living versus Surviving. She observes, you're not living your life, you're just surviving. I walk around hollow, thin as a hornet's nest. This one's called Snow Globe. Christmas Day, smiles, laughter. Numb, mummified, heavy, still. And then this one's called Sobriety. Use more. Use again. Numb yourself for a little while. But you're always left with the same discomfort. Sobriety. Those are a few more from Tulips. Yeah.
Right. Like, have you ever been involved in like working with art therapists, or ever gone to like different like clinics, and read your own poetry, or like, do workshops and, to work with people to try to encourage them to write?
Not really. I've thought about it. The only thing I've done is I've, in the same course where I was a student at U of T, with Professor A.F. Moritz, I've done a couple times come in as like a guest lecturer, and then done like a workshop sort of there, talking about, like how you can use like use poetry to like explore things like mental health, or, other parts of your identity that maybe, you're kind of like ashamed of or scared of like sharing, and, just kind of using it as this like kind of therapeutic or healing tool. Yeah.
And like, with your work, like, have you like, have you ever like decided to like incorporate it like an individual medium though? Like maybe you have like it like uses like, like an art exhibit, like text, that would be like sort of interactive, with people, or like an app sort of thing.
Yeah, I haven't really, no, honestly. I really, like I said, like zeroed in on like just like written poetry. I think in Tulips, we have a little bit of like illustrations, or like kind of like image of the city sort of, but not really, not as much like visual stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And like, so like what are your goals with your writing? I mean, do you want to, like, would your goal like a decade from now just to be totally focused on your poetry and different creative pursuits? Like what kind of things are you working on, you think?
I'm honestly not sure. I think for me, the next thing might be more of like a collection of essays, I think. Because the thing is, like with the mental health stuff, I've very much like kind of like stabilized for the past like 2 or 3 years. So kind of oddly, as I've gotten more healthy, I've become less drawn to the poetry, because it was such a therapeutic tool for me. Right. Whereas now, for some reason, I just feel a little bit more comfortable with prose. And yeah, it just kind of naturally happened. So I think for me, I'd really like to, for my next book, maybe put out like a collection of personal essays or something like that.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And have you done like a lot of freelancing with your writing and stuff, and collaborations with different like journals?
Yeah. Well, so like my poems have been published in a bunch of different journals here in Canada. But then in terms of my freelancing, I've done like a lot. I used to work on like a freelancing site like Fiverr. I don't know if you've used Fiverr.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, like I've written like so many different like ebooks or, you know, random blog posts for different companies. But one that I've really kind of stayed at is it's like a personal finance company and like website called The Financial Diet. They're based out of New York as well.
Okay.
So I've been writing for them for over 3 years now, like pretty consistently with like a lot of mental health content for personal finance. So that's kind of been somewhere I've stayed. Yeah.
Really, mental health with personal finance. Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yeah, for me, they've always been very intertwined because when I was very, like, you know, for lack of a better term, like unstable or unwell, you know, my finances were a wreck. Like I was spending, and especially like I have borderline. That's one of the things, like with, you know, one of the poems I read. So borderline, there's a lot of, for me, impulsivity. So there's a lot of like impulsive spending and like going into debt and, you know, just generally not really caring about, you know, rules or structure. So yeah, it's always been something that I've seen such an intersection with. And, you know, as I've healed sort of like my mental health, and also I've been like improving my finances and just like learning budgeting tools. And through the Financial Diet, actually, like they have a book like called The Financial Diet, and that book just kind of changed everything for me. And then sort of down the line, I eventually applied to be a writer with them, and I've started working together with them. But yeah, those two things, I think, you know, it's not spoken about a lot, how severely your mental health can affect your finances.
That's really interesting, because I felt like that way a lot, like last year did in the beginning of the shutdown, a lot of compulsive buying.
Yeah, for sure. Online shopping, for sure.
Yeah. Because I feel like I need to enjoy the stuff now, because I don't know if I'm going to get the COVID, if I'm going to be dead less than a year from now. I need to like get this instant gratification. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think, a lot of people are, they're going through that, or still going through that. Like
sure.
with your writing, like, do you ever like, I mean, I know your stuff seems very grounded. Are you ever into sort of like you're ever inspired like by stuff, by dreams, like anything that appears in your dreams, write about it, or maybe some sort of like some sort of fragments of some text will appear in your thoughts, when you're sort of like half asleep, that you'll end up using that in your work later on?
I don't know if I've really explored the dream aspect that much. I'm on medications that give me very vivid dreams. So I don't know. I'm always kind of very shaken when I have like these vivid dreams. But yeah, that's not something I've explored, but it could be very interesting. Yeah.
With the writing aspect and with mental health, is there anything that you hope that people like, I mean, people have sort of, misconceptions about tortured writers, and
Right.
and like when I had like a poetry teacher in high school. So I was very lucky enough to like take this class, and she was really into Bukowski. That's how I really got into him.
Oh,
And,
cool.
and like, and so like, but like my poetry as a teenager was very depressed, and like, she would be concerned not only with me, but other peers of mine who took her class, if she felt your writing was like, it sounded like you had sort of like suicidal sort of imagery in it. Like I would get a call to see the school psychologist, like she would just to make sure that everything's okay. That was sort of like a thing that was going on at the time.
Yeah, that's happened to me for sure. Yeah, talk to the school like social worker or whatever. Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I just love, like, any kind of writing that taps into personal stuff and about, stuff in the past, So, do you mind like discussing anything that was unusual that might have happened to you that might have, inspired your own writing?
I think, yeah, for me, it's all, a lot of it has just been, yeah, like brain dumps, like just getting rid of whatever I was going through. And I think, yeah, with Tulips, yeah, the experience of being hospitalized, like I've been hospitalized, I don't even know, 20 plus times, like just so many times. And it's just like, it's just an experience, I guess, that like a lot of people have never had or don't really understand or don't know what it's like. So I guess that's kind of something I was trying to communicate, like just how, traumatic it can be, like just getting help in an inpatient setting. Because you're going in there a lot of the time to deal with different traumas, but the actual process itself can be quite traumatic. So that's something that, yeah, I guess I explored a lot in my like earlier work, for sure.
And did you ever like do like writing when you were in the hospital?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, like the Joy of Life one that I wrote there, I think I wrote while I was, yeah, like in the hospital. I think there's been a few. Obviously you're writing like worksheets and different letters to yourself or whatever exercises they have to give you. But yeah, I've done some poetry here and there, or I would always try to like bring a book with me if I knew I was going to the hospital, like either like have a copy of a Bukowski book or something, because you don't have access to your phone on certain units. So that was definitely like a comfort to like have a book. Yeah.
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 Besides like tying in like writing with mental health with finances, or any other like topics that you've also been writing about and blending in the importance of mental health?
In combination with like the mental health stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Um,
other topics that people usually wouldn't consider, like tying in.
I don't know if, um, not really. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, it's mainly been the poetry. And then as of the past few years, mainly like the personal finance
Yeah.
sort of things. Yeah. I get very fixated on things. So I
Yeah.
feel like I just put my all into it. Yeah. When I commit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you like doing any like readings coming up, like in the towards the end of the summer or in the fall, or anything going on?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, as more and more people are vaccinated, hopefully, like usually I would just get most of my gigs through my publisher, Great Borders,
Yeah.
and they would be like hosting a bunch of stuff. So hopefully, yeah, once more and more people are vaccinated, those things will pick up.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, it was great chatting with you, Mercedes. Do you have anything you would else you'd like to share, with the listeners for this podcast? Anything with your writing or anything you would like them to know about?
Um, I guess maybe touching on what you had brought up towards the end about like the myth of like the tortured artist and stuff like that. It can, I guess like at a certain point in my life, I thought that like to be inspired, I had to be like sick or depressed or whatever. And like those things can be a source of inspiration, but I mean, there's also a lot of inspiration on the other side, like when you are doing better, like just because, you don't need to, you don't need to think that, you need to be like, like Bukowski, like, just an alcoholic and doing all these things in order to be a great writer. You can be that and be a great writer, but it's definitely not necessary. So I feel like it's good to, I guess, yeah, just good to know that it can be one of the cases of being a writer, but there's like so many other ways to be a writer. And like, yeah, being on the other side, kind of where I'm doing a lot better and like, sober off alcohol and things like that. It's like, you do still have inspiration, but just from other things in other ways. And, yeah, that's one thing.
Yeah, great. Hello, thanks for listening to the Erratic Dispatches podcast. We'll be back shortly after a brief break. Thanks again for tuning in to this latest episode of the Erratic Dispatches podcast, featuring an interview with Mercedes Killeen, blogger, poet, and mental health advocate. Definitely check out Mercedes Killeen's official website, which is mercedeskilleen.com, where you'll find a link to purchase both of her poetry books, Tulips and Using a Spoon as a Knife, through Gray Borders Books. And also there are links to check out samples of her blog and writing posts. Thanks again for listening. I'll be back soon with a new episode. Take care. Bye-bye.